This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Economic recovery high on expectations of Ghanaians as they head to the polls. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi hints at dissolving parliament and fresh elections if he fails to form a new political coalition. And we update you on the visit to France by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe, and with me in studio with the business headlines is Uche.
Thank you, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Bits. The IMF completes its first credit facility review for Somalia. And Egypt and South Sudan seek to improve their trade relations. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. We begin in West Africa, where Ghana's incumbent president Nana Akufo-Addo and his main rival, former President John Mahama, are contesting for the presidency in a general election. Each candidate has offered assurances of reviving the economy following its first contraction in nearly 40 years. In total, 12 presidential candidates are in the race, with most voters likely to settle for either Addo and his New Patriotic Party or Mahama's National Democratic Congress. The two parties have alternated being in power since 1992. If re-elected for a second four-year term, Addo promises to push ahead with a $17 billion recovery program to boost jobs creation. Mahama, on the other hand, has pledged a $10 billion infrastructure plan. Observers will be looking to see if Ghana maintains its long-standing reputation as a beacon of democracy in a politically unstable wider region. The results are expected to be announced not later than 10th of this month. Now, earlier we spoke to our correspondent Nabil Ahmed Rufai for more on the elections in Ghana.
Well, the turnout has been good so far. Polling started at exactly 7 a.m. local time across the polling stations. Here at this particular polling station, you can see that things are very, very calm. You can see a lot of people queuing to cast their ballot. What it means is that early in the morning, there were a lot of people here. Some even spent the night here in order to be among the first people to cast their ballot. So generally, we can say that it's been quite a peaceful elections, and the turnout has been great so far. The fact that the Electoral Commission made today a public holiday meant that a lot of people would come to the polling stations to cast their ballots. Well, a lot is at stake for Ghana in terms of solidifying its, position as a leader in democracy within the West Africa sub-region. So this particular election is a test for Ghana to also make sure that it comes out victorious in terms of ensuring that there is peace after the election without any post-election violence. So it's very, very critical, especially for the Electoral Commission, to ensure a free and fair election that every party participating in this particular election would accept. So there's a lot at stake, although the two contenders, the former President John Mahama and the current President Nana Akufo-Addo, have signed a peace deal to send a signal that they would accept the results of the Electoral Commission when it's announced it within the next 24 hours. And if they feel that it is credible, then they would just, accept the result. So it's once again a test case for Ghana to solidify itself as a leader in terms of democracy within the West Africa sub-region, and it's something that the entire country is hoping to achieve.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, President Felix Tshisekedi says he plans a major overhaul of how the country is governed. The DRC leader has warned that he might be forced to dissolve parliament and hold fresh elections if he is unable to form a new coalition government. The announcement came after a fallout in a coalition with supporters of his predecessor Joseph Kabila, who currently wield a majority in parliament. Tshisekedi took over from Kabila in January 2019, but the president's room for implementing much trumpeted reforms has so far been hampered by the need to forge a coalition with the pro-Kabila Common Front for the Congo.
These consultations also highlighted by more than an overwhelming majority the rejection of a coalition between the Common Front for Congo and the Heading for Change. This sad conclusion comes after 2 years of tireless efforts and self-sacrifice to preserve the essentials within the coalition. Accordingly, I have decided to appoint an officer in accordance to the provisions of Article 78, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution. He or she will be responsible for identifying a new coalition with an absolute majority of members in the National Assembly.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is on a state visit to France to shore up close ties. Egypt and France have enjoyed an increasingly close relationship under the rule of Sisi. Both Paris and Cairo are concerned by the political vacuum in Libya and the threat from jihadist groups in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. In this regard, French President Emmanuel Macron says he will not stop the sale of weapons to Egypt over alleged human rights violations.
I will not condition matters of defense and economic cooperation on these disagreements. First, because I believe in the sovereignty of the people and in the respect of our legitimate and mutual interests. Also, I think it's more efficient to have a policy of demanding dialogue than a boycott that would only reduce the effectiveness of one of our partners in the fight against terrorism and in terms of regional stability.
It is not appropriate for you to present the Egyptian state and everything that it does for its people and for the stability of the region as an oppressive regime. This view is one of the past with regard to the Egyptian state.
Rose Cullen is following these developments from Paris and joins us now live. Rose, what's the latest on the visit to France by the Egyptian president?
Well, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was welcomed this morning in central Paris with a military parade, a cavalry celebration as well. He started his state visit last night with dinner with the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, and he continued that visit today with bilateral talks with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and the two men then held a news conference, and we heard a couple of sound bites there from what the two men had to say afterwards. There are areas where both countries do see eye to eye, but also areas of tension between the two states. Human rights is one of those. Activists have been calling on President Macron to raise the issue of human rights abuses with Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and President Macron said he did just that. Human Rights Watch had called, saying that French diplomacy has long indulged President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's brutal repression of any form of dissent. So President Macron saying he did raise the issue, but as we heard in that little recording there from President Macron, he said he wouldn't condition the sale of future arms exports from French defence firms to Egypt around the issue of human rights. So there are some areas where they disagree, areas where they do agree that the need for security in the region, and also both men are wary of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Both countries concerned about what they see as Turkey's growing influence in the Eastern Mediterranean region.
Right. So, Ross, optimism is high on Libya achieving lasting peace. Should we expect a common position on this issue to be taken by France and Egypt?
Libya, the situation there, Peninah, is going to be one where both men have spent a lot of time focusing, where their aides will have been meeting as well to try to work out how to bring lasting peace to Libya. France has long been involved in and around the country, taking part in the NATO bombing campaign in 2010. People saying that he is concerned about foreign elements, which some people took to be a guarded comment that he's concerned about Turkish influence in Libya.
And finally, Ross, security and the fight against terrorism, they're also pressing issues affecting these two countries. How is this likely to play out during Sisi's visit in France?
Well, this is more of an area where the two sides see convergence. Egypt has been suffering terror attacks regularly, both in its mainland and also on the Sinai Peninsula. Also, the attacks against Egyptian nationals abroad, such as the beheadings 5 years ago of Coptic Christians in Libya by militants associated with the so-called Islamic State or Daesh. France has been battling against armed groups in West Africa, and also at home, where we have seen terror attacks here in October by Islamist radicals, as President Macron calls them. So his commitment that he will continue will allow French defence firms to continue supplying Egypt with warships, with fighter jets, is a sign of his commitment that he sees in Abdel Fattah al-Sisi another man, another leader, another head of state who wants to continue this support overtly, openly saying that he wants to defeat terrorism. That is something that is close to President Macron's heart, trying to bring more stability to France and trying to stamp out what he sees as radical elements in French-speaking nations in West Africa. And he also sees in Abdel Fattah al-Sisi somebody who has suffered terrorism in his home country as well. And the two men there backing that support for more security in the region.
All right, Ross, thank you. We appreciate that update. Ross Cullen live for us in Paris. And in a related development, the media office of the Libyan National Army says that the force's leader, General Khalifa Haftar, is in Egypt. Cairo will be the first stop of a foreign tour for the commander of the LNA. The second leg of his journey is set to take him to the French capital, Paris, where President Macron has been discussing the Libyan crisis with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. CGTN's Adel Mahroui has more details.
The commander of the Libyan National Army, Khalifa Haftar, came to Cairo on Sunday for talks with Egyptian officials. Haftar has discussed the ongoing ceasefire and political negotiations. Egypt has not officially announced that visit. It comes, however, after the LNA announced it had pushed back militants who attempted to take control of the southern military base in Ubari.
The visit focuses on security of the borders between the two nations and Egyptian officials. These meetings are discussing Egypt's support for the ongoing political process. Haftar believes in Egypt's role in the conflict, and he usually coordinates steps taken by the LNA, which Egypt supports.
Haftar's visit follows accusation by the LNA forces that their western-based rivals recently received shipments of arms and fighters from Turkey.
Turkey has invested a lot in the Western militias. It is keen that they do not get disarmed or lose power. When chaos breaks in Libya, that usually coincides with foreign powers sending more arms and fighters into Libya. Movements of Turkish ships near Libya's seas is common, which makes the LNA raise its alert, and that creates tension. We fear that such behavior may push talks to fail.
This week, the Western-based Government of National Accord's defense minister has threatened the UN that GNA will withdraw from the ongoing talks if Haftar makes any military moves. The fast political progress seen in the Libyan crisis during the past month has slowed down in recent weeks. Libyan sources are saying that after wrapping his meetings in Cairo, Haftar will fly to Paris. In the French capital, President Emmanuel Macron and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi have held talks on Monday to discuss the Libyan crisis. Officially, however, no announcement has been made about a meeting that brings the two leaders together with the commander of the LNA. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, in 2017, the African Union adopted a strategy document aimed at reducing armed conflicts in Africa by the year 2020. But as this year comes to a close, the AU says the Silencing the Guns initiative still has a long way to go, although some progress has been achieved in some African countries or regions. Tuli Shabalala has more.
Due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, the African Union's 14th extraordinary session was held via video conference over the weekend. It was held under the theme of Silencing the Guns. AU Commission Chairman Musa Faki Mahamat says the key to realizing this vision has been effective in easing crisis in the Central African Republic, Sudan, South Sudan, as well as Somalia and Libya. However, there is still a long way to go in addressing the root causes of the proliferation of firearms and weapons in Africa.
These causes, as everyone knows, are the deficiencies of the state in political and economic governance, which translates concretely into injustice, exclusion, extreme poverty, the degradation of the education system, and even the lack of basic social services, corruption, and the lack of dialogue.
The AU Assembly members called on African leaders to work together to end violence and terrorism in the continent.
Peace and stability will remain elusive if we do not address the connection between security and development. As we march towards the start of trading under the African Continental Free Trade Area on the 1st of January 2021, we are mindful that its success cannot be separated from a stable and conducive business environment that is able to attract foreign direct investment.
The AU virtual gathering also addressed issues of climate change and COVID-19, which have had a major negative impact in Africa. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up, we look at efforts to empower the girl child in Nigeria amid rising cases of discrimination. And Egyptian man showcases the delicate and intricate art of making statues using the tips of pencils.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Nigeria, like the rest of Africa, there have been long conversations around equality for the girl child. Despite government efforts to close the gap between boys and girls, the gains have remained inadequate. A new report from the advocacy group African Child Policy Forum indicates the prevalence of discrimination against girls and inequality. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports.
Hildatu Abdullahi is from northern Nigeria, a predominantly patriarchal society. Females face cases of forced child marriages, female genital mutilation, sexual abuse, and exclusion from education. But Hildatu didn't want to be a conventional northern Nigerian girl child. She was bent on completing her education, building a career for herself, and choosing her own life partner. So she fled her home when her family tried forcing her into an unwanted marriage.
In the Hausa community, they feel getting married is like a huge achievement for you. And when a man gets married to you, it's like he's doing a favor, and which is very wrong. When you talk about being successful, you want to open a shop, you want to do this, you want to do that, the first question they try to ask you is, are you not going to get married? You're planning all this, when are you going to get married? Some parents will even stop their children from going further, from achieving more success.
Hildatu was lucky enough to find a new path, but there are millions of girls from her region and across the African continent who aren't as lucky. A new report released by an advocacy group, the African Child Policy Forum, shows that girls are condemned to a lifetime of discrimination and inequality. There are about 308 million girls under the age of 18 in Africa, yet only 1 in 5 of them had access to secondary school. Despite government's effort to close the inequality gap, much more is required from other key players.
I think we have left this responsibility to the government alone, and we know that government cannot do everything. Government can only give us policies, it can only give us framework. It's now left for CSOs, CBOs, NGOs to go to the grassroots and see how we can combat gender inequality in all its forms, in workplace, in sports, in education, in schools, everywhere we find it.
According to a 2019 World Bank data, 49.33% of Nigeria's 200 million population is female. However, factors like culture, religion, violence, and poverty continue to drive girl inequality gap in Nigeria. A McKinsey report projects that Nigeria's GDP could grow by 23% by 2025 if women are given an equal chance to participate in the economy. So girl and women rights advocates across Africa are urging governments to implement laws and policies for a more girl-friendly society. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Technology is constantly evolving, and this means that what were once revolutionary concepts or skills can become obsolete overnight. In many countries, it's the youth who are more keen to create convergence between tech and everyday life. In Morocco, young coders have found a rare haven to advance their IT careers. Let's take a look.
Morocco's 1337 campus is a dream come true for budding geeks. Conceived as a paradise of coders, phosphate manufacturing giant OCP decided to set up the campus by converting a disused factory in the central mining town. This was in a bid to address the country's severe need for tech expertise.
1337 is more than a school. It is a very new and different concept here in Morocco and in Africa. Why? Because 1337 came to radically change the academic system in Morocco and in Africa.
Tuition is free and students largely create their own curricula. It all happens on a 24-hour campus reminiscent of Silicon Valley, complete with a canteen, graffiti art on the walls, and game rooms offering swings and table football.
Here you are free to come whenever you want to come to work. And the moment you walk through the door, there are no classes, there are no teachers, there is no school year, so everything changes. The moment you come to 1337, you are a student and a teacher at the same time.
The institute, which ran its first courses in 2018, hopes to provide more space for students to hone their skills.
Here I feel like I'm moving forward better and that I'm learning a lot. Above all, it is you who manages your own time. Here we study the latest trends in this field. For example, we have courses in artificial intelligence, system courses, security, web and graphics. So all the latest trends in the world can be found here.
The name of the center comes from a system of modified spellings known as leet speak or 1337 5P34K, used by hackers and gamers to show their elite status in online communities. The institute works closely with 42, a French programming school created in 2013 by telecoms billionaire Xavier Niel, and highly regarded in the tech world.
The first thing you don't find elsewhere is that this is a goldmine of talent, and given the orientation of the startup in digital. Each time we are led to use new technologies and not necessarily those found on the market. Here at 1337, you have a goldmine of developers, and every time you can't get stuck on one new technology or another. It's very fluid.
Some 8,000 computer engineers graduate every year in Morocco, but many are attracted by higher salaries in Europe and North America. Hopefully, 1337's idea to attract the invisible youth and misunderstood geeks who don't fit into the system will be able to create opportunities to sustain the talent locally. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The 6th Term Art Fair is taking place in Cairo this week. 185 artists are showcasing their talents in what is considered the largest annual art fair in Egypt. Yasser Hakim has more.
Over 1,500 paintings are on display here for art lovers to enjoy or buy it. The fair is organized by TAM Gallery, an association dedicated to promoting local artists, and co-founded by Lina Moefi.
The gallery serves as a platform for a lot of artists because we always seek to show people who still don't have an opportunity or a chance to show their art alongside very well established artists. So you can see people who are very well established with very successful long careers next to new and fresh artists, and you can see how they're learning from each other.
One of them is Abdel Wahab Abdel Mohsen, a renowned painter with 50 years of experience.
There is plenty of quality and a wide variety of artwork which reflects different perspectives and cultures in one place for the viewer. This enriches the art scene. I commend the organizers for being so active even within this coronavirus era. This time are a culmination of my work during the lockdown and curfews. I concentrate on nature and color effects.
Not only paintings were on display, but there was also a section for artistic photographs.
I meant to film in the streets and using a mobile phone instead of a professional camera. The challenge is to show different angles and artistic quality using the mobile. Another challenge is to take good photographs in Egyptian streets, which is quite difficult and volatile.
The art fair has attracted a good audience. The feedback has been positive.
The big plus is that it gathers a large number of artists in one place, but at the same time, the high number of paintings makes it difficult to grasp it all at once. Need to come several times.
The number of artists is great. It reflects how Egypt is rich in talent that is popular locally and internationally. I'm definitely planning to buy a couple of paintings.
Going into its 7th year, the TAM Gallery promises to expand its activities as a route for upcoming talents into the art scene. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Staying in North Africa, an Egyptian artist is causing waves on social media with his eye-catching pharaonic mini statues. They are intricately carved from tiny tips of pencils. Here's CGTN's Joy Kiruki with more.
28-year-old Ibrahim Bilal is the artist behind these unique pieces of art. Armed with a microscope, some carving tools and a pencil, Bilal carves intricate designs into his medium. Inspired 3 years ago by a foreign artist who creates similar work, Bilal decided to use the medium to highlight Egyptian history.
My first ideas were a bit weak. Art must be based on an idea, so I have to discuss a specific idea or send a specific message through my work.
Bilal, who graduated from law school, markets his work on social media. He also runs an educational channel on YouTube where he shows his techniques.
I
thought Egyptian heritage is the best thing to preserve through this kind of sculptures. When I started posting my pharaonic works, the reaction was unbelievable. This inspired me to further work on this idea and develop myself so that the quality becomes high and be at the same level of a foreign artist who has mastered this kind of art.
Armed with a collection of 22 pieces of art, Bilal plans to one day showcase and sell his works in an exhibition. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Here's another look at our top stories. Ghana's incumbent president Nana Akufo-Addo and his main rival, former President John Mahama, are contesting for the presidency. In a general election, each candidate has offered assurances of reviving the economy following its first contraction in nearly 40 years. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, President Felix Tshisekedi says he plans a major overhaul of how the country is governed. The DRC leader has warned that he might be forced to dissolve parliament and hold fresh elections if he is unable to form a new political coalition. And Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is on a state visit to France. Both Paris and Cairo are concerned by the political vacuum in Libya and the threat from jihadist groups in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. French President Emmanuel Macron says he will not stop the sale of weapons to Egypt over alleged human rights violations. Let's now catch up with the latest in business news and we join Uche for that.
Thank you, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The IMF completes its first credit facility review for Somalia. And Egypt and South Sudan seek to improve trade relations.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads.
we celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
And let's start in Somalia. The International Monetary Fund has praised the country's government for initiating a series of financial reforms in the country. Now, the announcement was made after the IMF completed the first review of its extended credit facility for the Horn of Africa nation in November. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo has more details from Mogadishu.
The International Monetary Fund says an extended credit facility supported program for Somalia is off to a good start despite challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic and climate-related disasters. The global financial lending institution has hailed Mogadishu's swift response to the pandemic, as well as floods that ravaged parts of the country and an ongoing locust invasion that's threatening food security. Earlier this year, the Ministry of Finance announced a wave of reforms, including tax relief on basic food commodities, as part of efforts to mitigate the impact of the virus. Under the new plan by IMF, Somalia now stands to benefit from an immediate disbursement of $10 million, bringing the country's total disbursement under the agreement to more than $365 million.
The international community, with their support, is also mindful of the effect that this had, and they will also increase their interventions in the economy. So we really think that the next year will be a very positive year for us.
Ahmed Qadr Abdi is an economic analyst and a lecturer at the University of Somalia. He says the move by IMF is timely, as it will give the federal government ample time to overcome economic challenges it faces.
The money that will be given to Somalia can assist the government of Somalia in tackling these issues, especially the economy that has been devastated or damaged by COVID-19, the decline in the remittance money, and also the locust invasion in many agricultural areas of Somalia.
Last month, the World Bank said the country's economy will shrink by 2.5% this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. However, the economy is forecast to rebound to 2.9% growth next year and 3.2% in 2022.
The decision of the IMF shows that Somalia has the economic system, or what we call public financial management, has been improved, so that this system is reliable, so that based on that, IMF has taken the decision and has completed the review of extended credit facility arrangement for Somalia.
Earlier this year, Somalia became the 37th nation to receive debt relief under the Heavily Indebted Poor Countries Initiative, arguing that Mogadishu has taken necessary steps to begin receiving debt relief. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Meanwhile, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has returned from South Sudan in what is considered a historic trip after he became the North African nation's first head of state to visit Juba. Now, besides political and security issues, talks with his South Sudanese counterpart, Salva Kiir, centered around promoting bilateral trade and investments. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim looking at the potential cooperation between the two nations.
Economic development is essential for South Sudan, which is coming out of a civil war. Egypt believes it can play a part in the rebuilding process through reconstruction and repair of the infrastructure projects. The meetings in Juba also focused on establishing partnerships in various fields.
To date, Egyptian investment there is in the range of $500 million. There are several sectors where Egypt has agreed to invest in soon. Besides infrastructure and real estate, there is the very important agricultural sector which Egypt is giving extra attention to. There will also be investments in technology and renewable energy. Using our experienced personnel, we will also be training laborers and creating skilled workers there, something South Sudan has been calling for continuously.
Aware of the financial constraints in South Sudan, Cairo is willing to accept a deal for oil in return for reconstruction, a move that was also adopted by the North African country with Iraq. Oil accounts for over 90% of South Sudan's exports. However, Cairo believes bilateral trade should be more diversified.
We import meat from South Sudan as well as vegetable oil and simple handmade products. But there is a lot more potential in South Sudan. We will also be working closely with them to create the base for exporting other goods such as agricultural products and minerals, for instance.
A joint committee has been set up to kickstart the Investment and Trade Cooperation and elevate economic ties to a new level. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, talks between the UK and the European Union are set to resume in a final push to reach a post-Brexit trade deal. Britain's chief negotiator, David Frost, is meeting with his EU counterpart, Michel Barnier. Now, this comes after the EU negotiator spoke to ambassadors of the 27 member states with no breakthrough. Britain and the EU remain at odds over fishing and business competition rules. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is also set to speak to EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen. Now, earlier we talked to our correspondent Tony Waterman about what is at stake if Brexit talks fail.
Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars every single year is what is at stake here. If there is a no deal scenario that plays out, then trade between the EU and the UK will revert to WTO rules, which means that tariffs and quotas are going to be reimposed for the first time in decades. The International Monetary Fund has estimated that this could shave 3% off of the UK's GDP and 0.5% off of the EU's GDP. So this is about money, but it's also about much more than money. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel said last week that if they fail to reach an agreement, that this sets a very bad example for the world. Here you have two Western superpowers who used to be very close in the same union, and now they can't come to an agreement on how to take their relationship forward. But you have to remember, this is a very unusual scenario because it's not very often that you have countries in negotiations on a free trade agreement to build barriers as opposed to breaking them down.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but ahead on Global Business Africa, we'll be exploring plans to kick off the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which of course starts in less than a month. All that coming up top of the hour. For now, it is back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live, coming up after the break. We look at how craftsmen in Benin are keeping alive the tradition of bronze casting.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Benin bronzes looted in 1897 when the British invaded the Kingdom of Benin, which is now in southern Nigeria, are considered some of Africa's greatest treasures. The craftsmen of Benin are keen to keep the tradition of bronze casting alive. For them, it's a way of life and a way to preserve their heritage for future generations. In the first installment of our special series, we bring you the story of one such artist whose family is associated with this ancient artwork in the past 600 years.
For me, bronze casting is a way of life, and we are the one keeping those heritage, because we grow up and we see what our ancestors have done, and to keep it alive, we have to follow suit so that our oncoming children or generation will see what our ancestors have done. I am Fred Ebuwa. I'm a bronzecaster. I'm from Benin, the home of bronze. My family has been doing this artwork for the past 600 years. Right from the time of Obaewaye, it was not making money business. It was only to worship the Oba, to keep events. That's how they were doing it then, because our ancestors then, they wasn't selling it. It had been taken to the palace and to some high-ranking chiefs as a souvenir, as a gift. In our ancestor days, it was just to keep an history, to keep event. Since the ancient Benin, there wasn't writing. They only give mark that so and so time this thing happened. Then the best way to preserve those history was through bronze casting. As for me, I will call myself a craftsman because my ancestors, they were all craftsmen, not an artist. Everything a craftsman does is in his head. You don't need to draw. That's why if you see most craftsmen, they took time to observe things. Like me now, I'll be looking at the shape of my hand. I look at the shape of my hand. Why am I looking at it? If you ask me to mold a hand now, I don't need a sketch of a hand. I just memorize that which I have seen. I'll begin to mold. Today I will show you the process of how to cast a bronze. I'm going to make an abstract of an Oba head right from the very first stage through the wax process before casting. This is the very first beginning of how to do bronze casting. First and foremost, you have to mold with the wax. Okay, we are done with the wax modeling. We are moved to the next stage of which is casting. Echo, you are why? This is the second stage after modeling. We have to cover the red sand. Now, I'm prepared to bake. Like in the next 2-3 hours, it should be ready for casting. I've just set the furnace to melt the bronze. In 2 hours, all will be liquid. You see now, it shows that the brass are fully melted. Once the brass are fully melted, it has a flame on it. And now, we are going to bring out what we are going to cast now. I'm doing the casting now. Aha. Now the bronze has been casted, and we need time for it to cool off so that we can break off the red sand from it. Now it has cooled down. We want to break and take to the next process, that which is filing. After this stage now, we file. Where we are now is like everyone is really struggling in the street. But if there is a support, I think this young one now, they can do better than what our forefather did. But the government, they are not supporting. Because everybody that is doing this craft is just on his own. We hear that the UN people are sponsoring it so that the thing will not die. But none of those things comes to the craftsmen. For the fact that the government is not supporting, everybody is just trying to survive. That's even the reason you are not seeing the best of our artworks now. Because there are bills to pay, there are things to run. If one is bothered or troubled, you cannot see the best of him. But when one is relaxed, I promise you, anytime he brings us a particular art, it will be a masterpiece. Here we go, it's ready. My message to the world is that whosoever that want to keep this heritage should come down to this very place and see for himself.
And coming up in sports, Egypt reveals plans for the 2021 World Men's Handball Championship.